Alright guys, we're going to be looking at geometric mean now. So there are two rules, and basically this is just similar triangles and we're just solving a proportion. But it's just a little bit, I would say just a little bit different than what you've seen before because you're going to use the same side length twice. So let's take a look. The first rule is the altitude rule. It says the altitude of the hypotenuse. Remember, the altitude is how tall it is from a vertex to the opposite side, and it makes a right angle. So if we have the hypotenuse, which means we have to have a right triangle, it divides the hypotenuse into two segments. So here it divides AB. So this is going to divide AB into AD and DB. So that's what that's talking about. The length of the altitude is the geometric mean of these two segments. So this distance here, so from D to C, that is going to be considered the geometric mean. And so to find that, you're going to do AD divided by, so AD, so which is, again, similar triangles. So AD divided by CD is going to be equal to CD divided by DB. So these are going to be similar triangles, and so you have making up that right angle there, making the altitude of the hypotenuse. That's basically all it's going to be. But you can see that you use CD twice, and so that's sometimes if that's your X, it kind of looks a little bit different than what you're used to. All right, so now let's look at the leg rule. The leg rule says that the altitude of the hypotenuse, again, of a right triangle divides the hypotenuse into two segments. The length of each leg of the original right triangle is the geometric mean of the length of the entire hypotenuse and the segment of the hypotenuse adjacent to the leg. Whew, that's a lot of words. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to take AD plus DB. So that's going to be this entire side length. Okay, and divide it by AC. So the hypotenuse basically divided by this leg length, and then we're going to have AC, which is the hypotenuse of this right triangle, divided by AD, which is the leg of there. So that's where those two are going to come in play, and again, you have AC written twice. So let's take a look and see how this is going to be applied. So here we're going to find the value of X and Y. So again, hopefully you can see the two right triangles that are going to be similar basically. So we have this one. Okay, let's see here. We have this right triangle, and then we're also going to have this right triangle. And so that's how we're going to find X first. No, we're not. All right, so let's take a look here at example 1. You can see that we have three similar right triangles, but the first one we're going to be able to solve for X. So what you'll notice is that X is actually the hypotenuse of this right triangle. So keep that in mind. But it's also the short side length of this right triangle. Okay, so we're going to have to solve those two. Again, we're going to use X basically twice. So what we're going to have is the short side length. So that's going to be 1 divided by X. So that's the short side length of this right triangle and the short side length of this larger one. And so then that's going to be equal to X divided by, which is the hypotenuse. I need the hypotenuse of this one, which is going to be 1 plus 9. So that's going to be equal to 10. So divided by 10. And so then we're going to cross multiply. And so we're left with X squared is equal to 10. And if you remember from the Pythagorean theorem, we're going to take the square root of each side to solve for X. And so X is going to just be equal to the square root of 10. So we're just going to leave it like that here. Okay, and then to find Y, we are going to use the two triangles. We're going to use the, I would say the large triangle, and then also the medium size triangle right here. Okay, so you'll see that y is the hypotenuse, so we need to make sure we understand, or that we realize that it's also the long leg of the large right triangle. And then also our hypotenuse is across from the right angle for the larger right triangle, and that is going to be 10 that we discovered because it's 1 plus 9. Okay, so I'm going to start with, I'm just going to have to write this out because it is really challenging here. So I'm going to do long leg divided by hypotenuse. Okay, so the long leg of the smaller right triangle is y, divided by the hypotenuse of the larger right triangle, which is 10. And that's going to be equal to the long leg of the smaller triangle, which is actually going to be 9, divided by the hypotenuse of the smaller triangle, which is going to be y. So then I'm going to cross multiply, and so I'm going to get y squared is equal to 90, and then I'm going to take the square root of each side, and so y is equal to the square root of 90, which also simplifies to the square root of 9 times the square root of 10, which actually is equal to 3 square root of 10. So this is going to be y, 3 square root of 10. So that's where those simplifying radicals comes into play there. All right, so let's take a look here. Let's first start off by finding, let's do y. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this smaller right triangle. Here's my right angle. And so then I'm also going to use this triangle here. So, and I'm doing that because on this black triangle, I have the short leg and the long leg, and then on the other right triangle, I have the short leg and the long leg. So I'm going to have short leg divided by long leg. So short leg is going to be y divided by the long leg, which is 6, is going to be equal to the short leg of the green triangle, which is going to be 2, divided by the long leg, which is going to be y. So then I'm going to cross multiply, and I get y squared is equal to 12. Almost did 8. That's not good. So then I'm going to take the square root, and so y is going to be equal to the square root of 12, which can be simplified. That's a square root of 4 times the square root of 3. So that's 2 square root of 3. So that is going to be y there. So now I need to solve and find x. And so x is a long leg, and I have the hypotenuse. And so we have long leg and hypotenuse. And then for this right triangle, okay, I have long leg, a long leg, and hypotenuse. So that's what we're going to do. So I have long leg and divided by hypotenuse. So the long leg, so let's look here. So the long leg of this large right triangle is going to be x divided by the hypotenuse, which is going to be 2 plus 6, which is 8, is going to be equal to the long leg of, let me make sure, of this right triangle, which is going to be 6, is equal to 6 divided by the hypotenuse, which is x. So now I'm going to cross multiply, so that becomes x squared is equal to 48. So then I'm going to take the square root of each side. And so to simplify this, that's going to be the square root of 16 times the square root of 3. And so that's going to be 4 square root of 3. So that is going to be equal to x. Okay. So again, just using those simplifying radicals, pretty important there. Okay, so let's look here. This one's a little bit easier because I just have one variable to solve for. So I have the hypotenuse of the larger right triangle, and then I also have a long side, and I have a long side of this one, but I don't have the hypotenuse on the other one. So, all right, so what I'm going to do here, I have long side and short side, and then I have, long side and short side of here. So this is going to be long side divided by short side. So the long side of the green triangle is going to be x divided by 10 is going to be equal to the long side of the black triangle divided by, which is 10, divided by the short side, which is 4. And so now I'm going to cross multiply, and so I have 4x equals 100. Then divide by 4 on each side, and so x is equal to 25. A nice, pretty number here for the first time. All right, so we have another x and y. So what I'm going to do is, let's see here. We'll just solve for x first. This comes first in the alphabet. So it's, let's see here. It is going to be, it is a short side for this big triangle, and I have the hypotenuse. And then I have the short side for this right triangle and the hypotenuse. So I have short side divided by the hypotenuse. So the short side for the larger one is going to be x divided by the hypotenuse, which is this whole thing, which is 20. 6 plus 14. And then that is going to be equal to the short side of the smaller triangle that I have outlined in black, which is going to be 6 divided by the hypotenuse, which is x. And I know that because this is a right angle, so that's the hypotenuse. So then cross multiply, and I get x squared is equal to 120. Ooh, not 80. 120, and then I'm going to take the square root of each side, and so x is going to be equal to the square root of 4 times the square root of 30, and so therefore x is going to be equal to 2 square root of 30. We'll just leave that there. All right, so now we need to find y. And so y is a short side and a long side. So of that triangle. And I have a short side and a long side. So we have long side, short side, and then we have long side, short side. So we have long side divided by short side. So long side is going to be y, short side is 6, and then we have long side, which is 14, divided by short side, which is y. Cross multiply, and I get y squared is equal to 84, and then I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and so y is going to be equal to, this can be written as the, actually I'm going to write it out like this. This is going to be the square root of 4 times the square root of 21. So that's going to be 2 square root of 21. And then you could approximate that as well if that's what your answer choices were calling for. So I think it's really helpful to do something like this to write the long whatever you're going to be using from the two triangles. Like this where we labeled it. I felt like that kept me very organized and knowing what I was setting up, because sometimes this can get really confusing even for us math teachers. So it's your turn to practice. You're going to practice geometric mean on your skill check.